Chapter 21. Combat! Troy got another fire going, moving the stove up even closer to the cave entrance this time. But by nightfall, it had almost burned itself out. He sat and watched the flames sink lower on top of the stove, while outside, the snow-covered landscape seemed to glow beneath the pale twilight of an Antarctic summer night. Farther back inside the cave, Kelly tried to comb out Wolf's matted, dirty coat, snipping off the impossible tangles with a pair of small scissors she had brought in her backpack. "You're a real mess, Wolf," she said. "You know that?" The mixed breed looked up at her and whined. "But I guess we're lucky to have you back, aren't we?" "The mutt's a survivor," Troy said. "How did he ever follow us this far?" "Same way that attack dog did. Huskies have a keen sense of smell. They can track people a long way. And Wolf's only half husky. The other half's a pure timber wolf. Wolves have an incredible sense of smell." "You think he met up with that other husky on the way?" "No. When those two meet, only one is going to walk away." "You think they'll fight?" "To the death." "Then we'll just have to make sure they never meet. Right, Wolf?" The dog whined again and licked his chops. Lick, lick. Troy poked at the dying embers with the spiked axe head. "Your fire's getting low," Kelly said. "It's almost out." "Don't you have any more paper?" "Not much. Enough for another few hours, maybe. Then we'll have to start using the butane." He got up and went over to his backpack, where he took out the last of the wadded paper and a butane cylinder. "You don't have to use it now, Troy. I'm not that cold anymore. You can save it if you want." "For what? We're almost at the peak. This is our first and last night on the mountain. It won't take us nearly as long to descend on the other side. When we hit level ground again, we won't be building any more fires. When we reach Vladivostok Station, we won't have to." He threw more paper on the fire, watching the flames rise. Kelly looked up from where she was working on Wolf. "How are we going to climb down in so much less time than it took us to climb up here?" "By rappelling." "Which means what exactly?" "Tying a long rope to a piton and then sliding down the face of the mountain while using your feet to bounce off the rock face whenever necessary." "That's the professional mountain climbers do it. That's the way they do it." "Pretty much." "Troy, I can't do something like that." "You'd be surprised what you can do when you have to." She put down the scissors and stared at him. "You really don't care about how other people feel, do you?" "In an emergency like this? Nope, not a whole lot." She went back to combing Wolf's coat, a frown on her face. He got up from the fire and walked over to her. She looked up. "What's this? Have you come to apologize? Or do you just need me to do something for you?" "I want you to do something." I thought so." He took out the Makarov and handed it to her. "I'm not that angry, Troy." "This isn't a joke." She reached up and took the Makarov from him. "What's going on?" "We have to wait here until it gets light. It's not smart to try to rappel in the dark, not even in this kind of half-ass, half-twilight darkness." "So we'll wait. Everyone's comfortable now." "It's not that simple, Kelly. While we sit here and relax, Tarosh and his men are climbing. They could already be at this elevation by now or ready to reach it soon." "But they don't know where we are." "Their attack dog does. They just have to follow him." She remembered Grushka and said nothing. "I have to go out and find them before they find us." "You're crazy, Troy! The T-Rex is still out there somewhere! You'll get killed!" "This cave is a good protection against T-Rex, but for Tarosh and his men, it could work like a shooting gallery, with only one way in and no way out." "You're really gonna go after them alone?" "I don't see any other option." "Then here." She handed the Makarov back to him. "You're the one who's gonna need this." "You'll be here by yourself, Kelly." "Wolf's with me." "Wolf could have problems of his own when that attack dog shows up, along with Tarosh and his men. I don't want them to find you here unarmed." "This gun only has one bullet left, Troy." "They don't know that. If anyone tries to enter the cave, hold the gun on them and tell them you'll shoot." "And if they don't stop?" "Shoot. Just make sure you aim first." He showed her how to work the safety on the Makarov. "It's on now. If you want to take it off, then you push this down. Make sure you do that to the safety before you try to fire it." "I still think this is a stupid plan. You don't even know where they are right now." "I have a pretty good idea." "And what if you run into T-Rex?" "I'll worry about that when it happens." "What are you going to use for a weapon?" "This." he said, raising the ice axe. He turned to leave, moving past the fire. Troy! He stopped at the entrance. You better not get yourself killed. I'll try not to. About 100 feet below the cave, the trail passed beside a fairly level open area that had been filled with large boulders before the avalanche. Now it was spotted with irregular mounds of fallen snow and ice, burying some boulders completely, leaving others partially exposed. Dmitri! Tarosh called to Proskov, climbing up the trail ahead of them. Stop! We'll rest here a moment. Proskov turned and came back down the trail towards Tarosh and the other 3 men. We can't make camp here, Callahan said, laboring to catch his breath. Too much goddamn snow and rocks under the snow. Yes, Tom, Tarosh said, but we all need a short rest, especially Mark. He almost slipped off the trail a while back. Kovici nodded, still shivering from his near miss. That's right, he said. I could use a break. Make us a bunch of goddamn sitting ducks for that monster, Callahan muttered, stopping here like this. We haven't seen any sign of the beast since we resumed climbing, Tom, Tarosh said. Perhaps he suffered a mishap and fell off the trail. More likely he's hiding somewhere waiting for us. Hey, Tom, Benson said. Don't make it worse than it is. Up yours, buddy. It can't get no worse. As the other 3 men walked off the trail into the open area, looking for boulders to sit on, Tarosh came up to Proskov. Keep your rifle at the ready, Dmitri, he said. Proskov unslung the .460 Weatherby. Yes, my colonel. If the beast appears, shoot for the eyes or the throat, and make every shot count. Da, my colonel. Kovici went farther into the open area than the other 2 men, scrambling up a huge boulder on his way. Hey, Mark! Benson called to him. Trying to get lost? I don't want to be near the trail if he comes back. Which one you talking about? The dinosaur or the dog? Either one. Kovici started moving down the other side of the boulder. He stopped and stared at a snowdrift near the bottom. A dark object about 3 feet long lay half buried in the snow and ice. If he had been anywhere else in the world, like back home in Michigan, he might have thought it was a dead animal, a wolverine or something. But he knew that nothing like that lived in the Antarctic. He climbed down the rest of the way off the boulder, feet crunching on the snow, and leaned over to touch the dark object. With a fierce snarl, Grushka burst out from beneath the light cover of ice and snow, concealing him, and leaped at the horrified cook's assistant. Kovici raised his arms in front of his face. Grushka seized hold of one arm, clamping down on it with sharp teeth and powerful jaws, snarling deep in his throat. Kovici fell down, screaming against the boulder, the weight of the large husky pushing him back into the rock. Ah! The other men came running across the snowfield. Grushka! Proskov called in a deep voice. Stoy! The husky continued to attack Kovici's arm, shaking it back and forth viciously as blood flew out across the snow. Grushka, stoy! Proskov brought down the barrel of the .460 on the back of Grushka's neck. The husky yelped, but continued to hang on to Kovici's arm. Proskov hit him again. The animal let go of the arm and backed off several feet, snarling, its mouth full of blood. Kovici rolled off the boulder, cradling his wounded arm. Jesus! Kovici gasped. My arm! See to him, Tarosh ordered Benson and Callahan. He turned to Proskov. Put Grushka on the leash, Dmitri. Proskov nodded. He took the leash from his backpack, then leaned over to snap it on the husky's collar. Grushka snarled at him, baring blood-stained teeth. If you try to bite me, stupid cur, Proskov said, speaking to the dog quietly in Russian, I'll slit your belly open and eat your guts raw. Understand? The husky snarled again, but let Proskov leash him. On the flat surface of a nearby boulder, Benson examined Kovici's wounded arm while Callahan looked on. My arm! Kovici cried, his voice trembling. Hey, Mark, Benson said, it ain't that bad, kid. He tore you up a bit, but it don't look like major damage. I'll go get some polysporin and some of them bandages out of the first aid kit in my backpack. Need help with anything? Callahan asked. Not really, Tom. Good. I need to go take a leak. Callahan walked over behind another boulder about 10 yards off and stood facing away from it. Don't move, whispered a voice next to him. Callahan jerked towards the voice, wetting his thermal suit. Jesus Christ! Darrow! Keep your voice down, Tom. Callahan turned towards Tarosh and Proskov, who stood at the edge of the trail with Grushka on the leash between them. Hey! He shouted to the two Russians. It's true! Troy tapped him on the side of the head. Ah! Of the end of the ice axe, a bit harder than necessary. Callahan crumpled into the snow in back of the boulder. Troy ducked out of sight, dropping with the body. Tarosh turned with the sound. Hear that, Dmitri? No, my... George! Tarosh called to Benson. Where's Tom? He went back behind that rock over there to take a leak. Benson pointed with the polysporin tube. Maybe he felt the urge to do more than that. See if he's all right, George. Hey, Tom! Benson called. Everything coming out okay? Wind howled through the boulders, scattering loose snow. Stay here with Grushka, Dmitri. Tarosh drew his own Makarov, flipped off the safety. I'll see what's happening. Behind the boulder, Troy could hear Tarosh's footsteps crunching across snow and ice. He gripped the ice axe harder. The footsteps came to a stop. Tom? Tarosh called. Are you back there? Answer me. His voice echoed off the rock wall of the mountainside. Troy began crossing behind the backside of the boulder, keeping down low so he could not be seen. If anyone else is there, Tarosh said, I have a gun. Troy's foot crunched on loose ice. He stopped moving. Troy? Tarosh raised his Makarov. Is that you? Troy looked up at the boulder's edge above him. A mound of avalanche debris balanced precariously at top. He reached up and swung it at his ice with his ice axe, breaking loose a sudden burst of snow and ice. Tarosh turned with his Makarov and fired. More snow and ice exploded from the top of the boulder. The reverberations from the pistol shot bounced like mortar fire against the rock wall. 9mm bullet ricocheted off the boulder with a metallic whine. The instant Tarosh fired, Troy ran for the next boulder, throwing himself across the open space between the two. Tarosh stood and watched as more snow and ice showered down from the top of the boulder he had fired on. A good trick, Troy, he called out, his voice echoing off the rock wall. A good trick, Troy, but you only get to play it once. Come out now and I'll overlook this. Troy crouched behind the new boulder, trying to control his heavy breathing, ice axe raised to his hand. You're quick, Troy, Tarosh said, and you're smart. You can try to play this game all night, running from boulder to boulder, but I don't have time for it. I'll give you one last chance. Come out now and there won't be any hard feelings between us. Troy flattened himself against the back of the boulder. Tarosh signaled to Proskov, standing beside the trail. Bring Grushka over here, Dmitri. The husky moved into the boulder field, snarling fiercely, straining hard at the leash. This is it, Troy. Come out from behind there now. Troy looked at the next boulder, but there was too much open space and Tarosh was ready for him this time. Tarosh nodded to Proskov. Release him, Dmitri. Proskov unsnapped the leash from Grushka's collar. The savage husky rushed towards the back of the boulder, catching Troy's scent immediately and locking on it. Behind the boulder, Troy could hear the sound of Grushka snarling and the rapid crunching of forelegs over ice and snow. He raised the ice axe, ready to swing it at the dog's head as he came around the side of the boulder. Grushka came over the top of the boulder instead, dropping down on Troy just as he looked up to see what was happening. The husky lunged for his throat, but Troy managed to turn fast enough that Grushka's jaws closed on his right shoulder. He fell to the snow-covered ground with the dog on top of him, tearing his shoulder viciously. The ice axe dropped from his hand when he fell, landing at least 3 yards away, sinking into the snow. He tried to reach for it. Grushka bit deeper into his shoulder, making him cry out, "Ah!" He rolled over with the dog, still trying to get him off of him, and then rolled over once again, trying to get close enough to grab the ice axe. Grushka hung on to him and continued to tear at his shoulder. Blood flecked his own face and the dog's fur. Grushka went for his neck again, jaws stained with Troy's blood. He held up his left hand to block the dog, and Grushka sank his sharp teeth into Troy's wrist. They wrestled to the ground, blood splattering the snow, rolling over again out from behind the boulder and into the open, Grushka snarling deep in his throat, and Troy using all his strength to try and break loose from the ferocious animal. They rolled over again, bringing Troy within the reach of the ice axe. He stretched out his right arm, grabbed the axe, and got ready to plunge the spike end into Grushka's side. The barrel of the 460 Weatherby dropped down on the back of Grushka's neck with enough force to make the husky shudder. "Grushka!" Proskov ordered. "Stoi!" He grabbed the husky by the collar and jerked him loose from Troy. Blood spilled from Grushka's mouth, along with the frustrated snarls. Proskov threw him to one side. The husky hit the frozen earth and rolled back onto his feet, teeth bared. Proskov raised the 460 in a threatening way. Grushka backed down, snarling, streaked with Troy's blood. Troy lay stunned on the snow, blood flowing from his right shoulder and left wrist, a deep gash on his right cheek where Grushka tried to go for the eyes. Proskov slung the 460 back over his shoulder and drew the Makarov. He flipped off the safety and pointed the gun at Troy, preparing to finish what Grushka had begun. Troy tried to leap to his feet, but the pain stopped him. He grabbed at his shoulder and fell back onto the snow. "You were useful to us once, Troy," Tarosh said, standing beside Proskov, looking down at him. "Too bad you couldn't stay that way." Proskov cocked the gun, then squeezed the trigger. The shot echoed off the boulders with a resounding crack. Troy's body jerked in reaction to the sound, and then he died. "I am just kidding, ha ha ha." The impact from the 9mm bullet never came. He looked up and saw Proskov standing over him, wavering slightly. Makarov still gripped in his hand, a stunned, unbelieving look on his eyes. The hand that held the Makarov began to tremble, then shake. The gun dropped. Proskov pitched forward, falling face down onto the blood-splattered snow. Blood welled up from the place where the bullet had entered his back, spreading across his thermal suit like an oozing red oil slick. Several yards away, Kelly stood with Zalman's empty Makarov gripped in both hands, breath steaming in the frozen night air. Kovici, seated on a nearby boulder, his mauled arm forgotten for the moment, looked on with astonishment. Benson, bandaged and polysporin in hand, seemed equally stunned. "Troy?" she called, coming towards him, lowering the gun. "Kelly!" He tried to sit up. "Get out of here, run!" She hesitated. Harosh turned suddenly and struck her with the barrel of his Makarov. She staggered back, the empty gun dropping from her hand as she clutched her forehead. Blood leaked through her fingers. "Kelly!" Troy tried to get to his feet. Tarosh grabbed her hard by one arm, shoving the muzzle of the Makarov into her face. "Very clever," he said, "but now you've upset me. You don't want to do that again, Miss Sawyer." He struck her again with the gun barrel, cutting open a new wound. She cried out in pain, and would have fallen had he not been gripping her arm. "You've made me very upset, Miss Sawyer." His breath came out in harsh gusts, pluming in the cold air. "I don't like women who try to act like men, because then they have to be treated like men, and that's not very pleasant, is it?" He raised the Makarov to strike her again. Troy, having finally made it to his feet, stumbled forward. Grushka leaped forward, snarling, blood dripping from his jaws. Tarosh stopped, Makarov held in midair, and watched as the fierce husky attacked Troy again. clamping down on the right shoulder, dragging him down into the snow. Here. He jerked Kelly around so she was forced to watch. Look at this, Miss Sawyer. Take a good look, and don't close your eyes, I'll hit you again. Blinking through the blood that ran down her face, she watched the husky tear mercilessly at Troy's shoulder. A dark shape came out of nowhere and hit Grushka with the force of a speeding truck, knocking him away from Troy and up into the air. The husky fell to his side on the frozen snow and rolled over several times before getting back to his feet and shaking his head vigorously, trying to see what hit him. Wolf hit him again, tearing into Grushka's throat with his powerful lupine jaws. They rolled across the snow and ice in a welter of flying blood and savage snarls. Tarosh raised his Makarov and tried to aim at Wolf, but the whirling, startling bodies seemed impossible, and it was interlocked like different parts of the same animal. The strangled howl broke from Grushka. Ow! The husky's body stiffened, then went limp. Wolf got to his feet and stood above it, a chunk of bloody flesh and muscle dangling from his jaws. Blood spilled out of Grushka's lacerated throat, forming a dark puddle on the top of the snow. Wolf raised his head and let out a howl that echoed across the frozen Antarctic landscape. Oh! Tarosh pointed his Makarov at the mixed breed. Wolf turned and growled at him. Go ahead and growl, Volk. You've made your last kill. With his other hand, Tarosh gripped Kelly's shoulder until she cried out in pain. Oh! Both of you have killed your last tonight, he said. The only killing left now belongs to me. He fixed the dog clearly in his sights and fired. The roar exploding behind him caused his hand to jerk and spoiled his aim. The bullet cut harmlessly above Wolf's head. Tarosh turned to see the Tyrannosaur towering above them in the dim Antarctic summer night. Hot breath billowing from open jaws, rage in its cold eyes. It pounced first on Kovici, who barely had time to scream before the creature snatched him from the surface of the boulder, only a dark smear of blood left behind to indicate that he had ever been there at all. As the Tyrannosaur greedily devoured Kovici, ripping his body to pieces with huge carved fangs, Benson crawled into the narrow cleft formed by two adjacent boulders, putting him temporarily beyond the creature's deadly reach. The Tyrannosaur roared at Benson in the cleft, clouds of vapor rolling across the boulder top, hot blood from Kovici's half-eaten body dripping down onto the icy stone surface. Then it turned and went after the others. Tarosh disengaged the .460 Weatherby from Proskov's rigid corpse, raising the rifle to shoulder level, working the bolt to bring a new cartridge into the chamber. The beast noticed Callahan's body face down in the snow. It stopped and leaned down to examine him more closely, chuffing noisily as it sniffed in the cold night air. Callahan, coming slowly back to consciousness, groaned and rolled over, raising his hand to where Troy had hit him. He winced at the pain on the side of his head. Then he heard the low roar, like a rumble of distant thunder overhead, and looked up to see the pale eyes peering down at him, terrible jaws gaping wide, curved fangs clotted with fresh flesh and new blood, huge tail twitching back and forth, impatient but eager anticipation. Jesus God, Callahan whispered, then started to scream. Ah! He scrambled to his feet, ignoring the pain in his head, and began to run, still screaming. He staggered through deep snow drifts between the boulders, glancing back over his shoulder at the great beast standing ready to attack, but motionless except for the patient twitching of its huge tail. Callahan threw himself behind another snow-covered boulder, gasping for breath, snot running from his nose and freezing his upper lip in the sub-zero Antarctic summer night. "Proskov!" he cried. "Tarosh, for God's sakes, help me!" His cries echoed off the ice-covered mountain. "Proskov! Tarosh, for God's sake, help me!" He leaned over to one side of the boulder, peering out fearfully, ready to jump back at once. The Tyrannosaur leaned down towards him, hissing clouds of billowing vapor from its deadly jaws. Callahan screamed, "Ah!" and moved back behind the boulder, moving too far in his terror, all the way to the other side. The Tyrannosaur moved with him, shifting its huge head to roar at him from that side. Terrible jaws agape, the cat-and-mouse game went on for several more seconds, with Callahan and the Tyrannosaur shifting from one side of the boulder to the other, until the great beast, tiring of the game, stretched its neck over the boulder and down, seizing Callahan in its monstrous jaws, lifting him high into the frozen night, legs kicking wildly inside the creature's maw, silhouetted against the pale Antarctic summer moon. Callahan's screams echo inside the merciless jaws, punctured by the distant breaking of grinding bones. Grind, grind, grind. A rifle shot rang out, echoing off boulders and rock wall. A dark red line appeared suddenly above the Tyrannosaur's right eye as the heavy .460 Weatherby cartridge tore out a chunk of rough, scaly skin. The Tyrannosaur roared in pain and rage, turning immediately to where the shot had come, Callahan's half-eaten body dropping loose from its jaws. Tarosh worked the bolt on the .460 again, chambering a new cartridge, took aim at the beast overhead, fired another round. The Weatherby bucked in his hands, slamming back into his shoulder, its report submerged by the Tyrannosaur's roar. The second bullet seemed to have no impact whatsoever, blood spilling down the side of its huge head. From the first hit, the Tyrannosaur roared again and lunged at Tarosh with a sudden darting motion. Tarosh reacted quickly. He threw down the .460 and dove headfirst towards a nearby boulder that might have provided some protection from the Tyrannosaur's attack, if he had only been able to move even faster. The Tyrannosaur caught him in midair, huge jaws clamping down, shut over his legs, cutting him off from the waist down. Tarosh dropped, screaming into the snow, a legless torso, and began to claw his way across the ground with his arms, leaving a trail of blood behind him like the listening track of a snail. The Tyrannosaur, still swallowing Tarosh's legs, stamped down on his wriggling upper body with one formidable taloned foot, shattering his spine and driving him straight through the snow cover into the frozen ice-bound earth. Blood burst from Tarosh's mouth. The Tyrannosaur brought down its huge foot again, smashing what remained of Tarosh's body into a shapeless, dark mass. Hissing at the remains, the beast turned to the others. Kelly had helped Troy across the snowfield, away from the Tyrannosaur's battle with Tarosh, pulling him inside a narrow passageway formed by two adjacent boulders, similar to the cleft where Benson had hidden. Troy leaned back against the icy interior surface of the boulders, gasping for breath, eyes closed, blood staining his face and the right shoulder of his thermal suit. "You'll be okay," she said, breathing hard herself. "Just don't move, and you'll be—" Overhead, the Tyrannosaur let out a roar that made the boulders vibrate. It seemed to be directly above them. Kelly covered her ears as the creature roared again, a frightened look on her face as she watched Troy leaning back against the rock surface, face deathly pale, eyes closed. The Tyrannosaur chuffed angrily at the boulder, knowing that the two humans were somewhere inside the cleft, but not sure how to get them. It leaned down, hissing at the stone impediments, peering into one side of the cleft, then the other. Kelly happened to look up at that moment to see a large yellow eye staring at her, cold and unblinking, with nothing about it that seemed even remotely part of this earth. She screamed despite herself, "Ah!" and started to back away until she realized there was nowhere to go. The Tyrannosaur roared again, the sound deafening inside the cleft, and butted the boulders with its massive head, reacting instinctively to rage and frustration. The top boulder gave a little, rocking on its foundation. Encouraged by this, the beast lowered its head and butted the top boulder again, more systematically this time, trying to roll it away from the bottom. Kelly began to scream in earnest now. Ah! The Tyrannosaur hit the boulder again, bellowing from the effort of its labor, slamming into the rock surface with its skull, the crack of bone against the stone echoing in the night air. The top boulder shifted its weight, rolling back slowly to reveal Kelly cowering against the bottom one, Troy resting motionless beside her. She threw her own body across his, screaming at the Tyrannosaur as it leaned down towards them. Troy opened his eyes and tried to push her off. "Get away from me!" "Troy, no! He wants me, not you! Get away from me! Save yourself!" "No!" The creature hissed at them, hot breath enclosing them like exhalations from a charnel house. The hideous jaws hovered above them, dripping with the blood of others who had gone before. Suddenly, the beast jerked with its massive head upright, scattering blood across the surface of the boulder and the bodies of the two people below it. The Tyrannosaurus turned sideways with a roar of angry impatience, twisting around until it could see what tiny but bothersome thing was daring to attack it. Wolf had crawled up onto the creature's gigantic right leg and was busy tearing at the tough, leathery skin with his powerful jaws. He had broken the skin, ripping loose large chunks. Minor damage to an animal the size of a tyrannosaur, but irritating, like the bite of a horsefly to a human. Shoo, fly, shoo! Kelly leaned forward, unable to believe what she saw. Wolf! The tyrannosaur lunged at the dog, clinging to its leg. Wolf let go and dropped to the ground, moving back just in time to escape the deadly jaws. He barked up at the beast, looming above him. The tyrannosaur turned all the way around until it faced its insignificant adversary, huge tail twitching slowly. It hissed irritably at the dog, then went for him with an almost supernatural speed. Wolf scrambled back out of the way, once more evading the murderous jaws, but by mere seconds and inches this time. Clouds of hot vapor rolled over the dog as the beast hissed at him again and lunged for the third time. Wolf leaped for his life. The huge jaws snapped at the frozen ground where he had been standing moments before, tearing loose great bursts of snow and ice. Wolf ran like the wind across the boulder field and up to the edge where it dropped down to the base of the mountainside far below. The tyrannosaur closed the distance between them in seconds with quick, bird-like steps, sprinting across the snow with the agility of an animal many times smaller than itself. Crouched at the edge of the drop-off, hind legs scrambling for purchase, Wolf barked defiantly at the tyrannosaur. Ruff, ruff, ruff! The beast roared at him as if to trumpet its superiority before delivering the final killing blow. Woo! Kelly screamed at the dog, "Run!" But Wolf did not run, choosing to stand his ground instead. The tyrannosaur lunged at the dog and staggered suddenly. The ice-bound drop-off gave way beneath the great taloned feet with a large crackling sound. Wolf and the tyrannosaur dropped along with it, rolling down the side of the mountain in a minor avalanche of rocks and frozen earth and tumbling ice and snow. The roars of the enraged beast echoed like the explosions from the chasm below as it fell and kept falling. Wolf! Kelly ran towards the drop-off. Troy staggered after her steps, awkward and erratic as he limped across the boulder field. He stopped at the section where the drop-off had given way beneath the weight of the Tyrannosaur, leaving in its place a gaping, jagged indentation in the ice. He stood beside Kelly and looked out over the edge. Showers of snow still spilled down the mountainside, along with small boulders and shards of broken ice sheets. Everything looked white and clear under the pale twilight of an Antarctic summer night, but it was impossible to see all the way down to the base of the mountain, or any sign of the Tyrannosaur's great body stretch out on the plain below. And that is the end of chapter 21! Don't go away! The last and final chapter is coming up next. Prepare for the end of Carnivore! Buckle up! It is the last chapter of Carnivore. Chapter 22. Ice. Benson helped Kelly carry Troy back to the cave, where they applied disinfectant to his wounds and let him sleep until late the next morning, when he woke up with a start. What? It came back to him, slowly. He stared at the bandages on his left arm and shoulder and raised his right hand to touch the bandage on his face. You're lucky, Kelly said, leaning over him, her own face bandaged, where Tarosh had hit her with the Makarov. Grushka didn't puncture any veins or sever any tendons. Who's Grushka? The attack dog, the one that almost killed you. How did you find out its name? George told me. He looked over at Benson, who sat several yards away. I helped patch you up some, Troy, he said, but Kelly here was the one who did most of the work. Thanks, Troy. Damn it! Thanks, George. He turned back to Kelly. You too. Just repaying old debts. How do you feel? Like every bone in my body's broken. Otherwise, great. What you need is some soup. She handed him a bowl. Thanks. He raised himself, wincing, and took a sip. Benson cleared his throat, as if trying to say something. Troy glanced at him. What is it, George? I hope you don't think that me and Tom and Pete Mendoza was with you guys? I didn't see him. That's because he was finally eaten, Troy! Damn it took him 20 chapters! Tarosh had him executed, Kelly said. That figures. Troy sipped at the soup. Anyways, Benson continued, I hope you don't think that me and the other sided with Tarosh because we wanted to or anything like that. I don't. Sure lucky for me when you came along when you did, Troy. Saved me from getting shot by Tarosh. Kelly was the one who saved us both. Troy looked up at her, even though she was out of her mind to take a risk like that. Are you sorry that I did? He swallowed more soup. No. I couldn't just sit there and let you go down there by yourself. Besides, her voice seemed to catch. If I hadn't taken Wolf with me, none of us would be here right now. By God, that's true, Benson said. He was one hell of a dog. Troy agreed. Kelly looked up. You think he survived the fall? I'm not even sure T-Rex survived, and he's tough as hell. But Wolf did a brave thing and died a brave death, defending us to the last. She lowered her head again. Troy put down the soup bowl and started to get up, wincing at the pain in his arm and shoulder. Where do you think you're going? She asked. Outside. Like hell you are! Lay back down there! He stood up and flexed his shoulder carefully. Kelly got up beside him. The T-Rex is dead, Troy. You've been hurt. You need rest. What's the rush? The weather, for one thing. The winds seem to have let up a bit during the past 14 hours, but a bad storm could blow in any time and lock us in here for days, maybe weeks. We don't have enough food to sit it out that long. What about your famous summer rains? Couldn't they blow all of a sudden too? Thaw this place out a little? The rains come when they come. Can't count on them. But we have enough food to wait a few more days. Not if we want to reach the Vladivostok station alive. They made it up to the summit and crossed over to the other side of the mountains without running into any bad weather, worse than strong winds at the peak. But by the time they found a ledge from which it would be safe to rappel, dark storm clouds had filled the sky above them. "Something sure looks set to blow in," Benson said. Troy nodded and continued to pound a piton into the rock surface of the ledge, using his ice axe as a hammer. "How do you know the thing's gonna hold?" Kelly asked. "Because the ledge is solid rock, and the piton is steel, and the rope is good heavyweight nylon." He struck some more blows, then paused to catch his breath. "Also, you just gotta trust these things." "That's what I was afraid of," Kelly said. When Troy finished hammering the piton into the rock, he tied one end of the rope coil around it, then started to knot all the coils they had brought with them together until they formed one single continuous length. "Are those knots gonna hold?" "They better." "Is the rope long enough to get us all the way down?" "This side of the mountain's shorter than the other. The plain slopes up more sharply to meet it." "How do you know that?" "I'm a geologist. I'm supposed to know these things." After the coils had been knotted together, Troy pulled on the length at different points, testing its tensile strength. "Everything check out okay, Troy?" Benson asked. "Yep, it's now or never." They both looked at Kelly. "If you think I'm going down there first, it would be a bad idea to have you go last," Troy said, "and it won't make it any easier if you're in the middle." "Look, why don't I just start walking down while you guys use the rope? It may take me a little longer, but then you can inflate the tent and get some rest while you're waiting for me." "I've got a better idea," Troy said, got up and put on his backpack again, wincing as the straps cut into his wounded shoulder. "I'll go down first, and you can go along with me." Kelly stared at him. "What are you talking about?" "I'll worry about the rappelling. You just hang on to me." "How? Put my arms around your neck and choke you?" "We've got some extra rope. We can make some kind of harness out of it, strap you across my back, just like a backpack." "What about your shoulder?" "The shoulder can stand it." It took him a few more minutes to rig up the harness. "See?" he said. "Simple. Just put your arms through here and hold on tight to these ropes and down you go." "Troy, no, I'm not doing this, okay?" "You don't have another choice. You can't stay up here and you can't walk down by yourself, so get ready to drop." As she adjusted herself in the makeshift harness behind his back, Troy tossed the extended length of the rope off the edge and watched it float down towards the sloping plain below. "Okay," she said. "I'm closing my eyes. That means if you happen to slip or the rope breaks, I'll never know about it until we hit the bottom." "Sounds good." He grabbed hold of the rope with both hands, then backed up to the point where the ledge dropped off into nothingness. "All set to burn a pair of thermal mittens?" Benson asked. "Yeah, sorry you gotta be the last one down, George." "No problem, Troy. You ready? It's now or never. How about you, Kelly?" "Just do it!" He took a deep breath, jumped off the ledge. They slid more than 50 feet down the rope, his thermal mittens smoking with friction, before Troy tightened his grip and swung onto the ice-covered rock face of the mountainside, bouncing off with his feet, using his legs as springs. "Oh, Jesus!" Kelly gasped. "I'm gonna throw up!" "Then turn your head and don't do it on me." They rappelled down several hundred more feet. Troy laughed as they hit the rock face again and swung out on the rope in a wide, spinning arc. "Once you get used to this, it's kind of fun." "I'll kill you when we get down," she said, her eyes shut. The roar from above them made her open them. They both looked up, twirling around with the rope, to see the Tyrannosaur standing on the ledge, enormous even at the distance, leaning down as it threatened Benson with gaping jaws. "My God!" Kelly cried. "George!" Benson went over the ledge, grabbing onto the rope, and started to climb down hand over hand. Troy loosened his own grip on the rope, letting them drop so far and fast that it felt like a free fall. Kelly screamed, "Ah! Ah!" as the wind whipped at her face. The rock face rushed past them in a stroboscopic blur. They fell hundreds of feet in a matter of seconds. Troy bounced off the rock face again with a jolting impact this time, only to drop even faster and farther. "What are you doing?" she screamed at him. Above them, Benson made it only a few feet down the rope before the Tyrannosaur lunged at him, picking him off like a piece of live meat on a string. As the terrible jaws closed over him, ripping his hands loose from their grip, the resulting shudder traveled down the entire length of the rope, coursing through Troy's mittened hands like an electric shock. He loosened his grip once more, dropping them even faster. Above, the beast made short work of Benson, devouring his struggling body quickly and hungrily, swallowing it whole. When it finished, it peered closely at the piton and the taut, trembling rope attached to it. Then, as the two tiny figures dropping rapidly into the distance below, it chuffed irritably once or twice, as if trying to figure out the connection between the rope, the figures, and the piton. Then, it seemed to understand and snapped viciously at the piton, tearing it loose from the rock, letting it drop, and the rope into the chasm below, roaring at them triumphantly as they drifted down towards the distant sloping plain. Troy felt the rope start to give when the Tyrannosaur bit into it, and then he slid the rest of the way down, friction burning through his mittens. They were 20 feet off the ground when the rope went completely slack, and they started to drop in a true free fall. "Roll when you hit the ground!" he shouted to Kelly. It seemed farther away than 20 feet. They fell and kept falling, but could not hit the ground. It then came rushing up at them suddenly, with all the shattering impact of a head-on collision. Troy hit the ground and started rolling, sending up showers of snow and ice around him as he skidded down the rope. Kelly hit at an angle, flipping head over heels first, then plowing through the snow on her back. Neither of them came to a stop until both had slid far enough the incline away from the foothills of the Peninsula Mountains and out onto the coastal plain. Kelly stopped first, half buried in snow from her descent. Troy rolled even farther before slowing down enough to stop himself by the use of the ice axe strapped to his side. When he got to his feet, he limped over to Kelly. Blood trickled from her lip where she had cut it, and from the wounds made by Tarosius Makarov. Her goggles had gotten knocked off, and her hood to the thermal suit had fallen back, exposing her blonde hair to the wind and snow. "Oh," she muttered, "my head's still spinning." He reached down to help her up. "Sorry I dropped this so fast, but I knew it wouldn't be long before T-Rex hit the rope." "Did George make it?" "No." The trumpeting roar from above interrupted him. They looked up and saw the Tyrannosaur peering down from the rock ledge above, bellowing at them, tail titching with furious impatience. "At least he's all the way up there," Kelly said. No sooner had the words left her mouth than the Tyrannosaur moved away from the ledge and over to a steep slope whose descent paralleled the sheer cliff Troy and Kelly had used for their rappelling. The beast began to climb down the slope, using its great taloned feet as crampons, half sliding, half leaping, as it descended on the mountainside. At one point, it lost its footing and rolled for hundreds of yards. When it came to a stop, it regained purchase and continued its rapid, sure-fire descent. "I can't believe it," Kelly said. "Now we know why the fall didn't kill him. Come on." He grabbed her arm and started to pull her forward from the foothills of the Peninsula Mountains out towards the frozen Wilder Sea, shining dark blue in the distance, filled with vast ice sheets and floating mountains of ice. "Troy, no!" She dug her feet into the snow. "What's wrong?" "We can't outrun him. There's no place to hide." "Trust me, I've got an idea." She shook her head warily at the end of her strength. "There's no way out of it this time, Troy." "It's risky, but it can work." "What?" He unstrapped his backpack and spilled its contents onto the snow-covered ice. He picked up one item, then another. "What do you think you're doing?" The Tyrannosaur roared with a sound like doomsday as it came sliding down the mountainside towards them, snow and ice crackling beneath its heavy taloned feet. "Here." Troy handed her a butane cylinder and kept the other item for himself, a small palm-sized package wrapped in white paper with wires and a metal box switch attached to it. He started to pull off her backpack. "Hey, what are you?" "You won't need this now. We can come back for it later." "What's that?" She pointed to the small wrapped package, something for slowing down T-Rex. "What is it?" "Gelyonite." Her mouth dropped open. "Good God, Troy, are you crazy? Did you see what that stuff did to Deep Core Station?" "This isn't quite as much as they use. Besides, I know what I'm doing." They didn't. The Tyrannosaur roared again, still distant, but closer. They looked up and saw it coming down the mountainside like a gigantic snow plow kicking up cascades of snow and ice. "Come on, Kelly, let's move." He pointed to the rocky, icebound coast of the Weddell Sea. You run along the beach that way. If T-Rex comes after you, turn on the butane cylinder. Point the flame at him. He doesn't like fire. It won't scare him off, but it should discourage him. Besides, if this works right, he won't even look at you. He'll be coming after me. Then what are you going to out there? He pointed to the ice shelf extending to the Weddell Sea. That's nothing but ice over water. What are you going to do when you reach the end of it? Trust me, I have it all worked out. He got back to his feet, wrapped the Gillionite in one hand. They both started running towards the sea, the sound of the descending Tyrannosaur crashing down beside them. The foothills on what side of the peninsula lay much closer to the Weddell Sea. Those on the other side did to the Bransfield Strait. As a result, Troy and Kelly quickly crossed more than half the distance separating from the shoreline. Quit running with me! He shouted at her as she sprinted alongside him. Run that way! He pointed to the rocky beach again. Away from me! But don't argue with me! Run! Get the hell out of here! She split off from him, looking over her shoulder to see the Tyrannosaur leap down from the foothills and onto the plain. The sight made her stumble and almost fall, but she caught herself in time and kept running down the beach, away from Troy, parallel to the water's edge. The Tyrannosaur gave a vengeful roar and went after Troy, who ran at top speed across the shoreline and out onto the ice shelf itself, extending like a pier into the Weddell Sea. The ice axe flopped at his side. The Gillionite rode like a disaster in the palm of his hand. The Tyrannosaur bridged the gap between them in a series of short, bird-like hops, moving with the swiftness and agility out of the proportion to its great size. It caught up first with Kelly, who ran slowly across the water's edge, struggling to run in all this sub-zero air that cut her lungs like knives. The Tyrannosaur leaped in front of her suddenly, blocking her way with all the finality of a landslide. She came to a stop, ice spraying from beneath her boots. The Tyrannosaur's scaly resistant hide was scarred with fresh scrapes and lacerations, the color of dried blood. It had suffered obvious damage from the fall down the mountainside, but seemed no less fierce for its injuries. It lowered its great head and hissed at her ominously. Kelly shrank back, a tiny figure, before the enraged beast. Out on the ice shelf, Troy worked quickly. Dropping to his knees, he took his axe and began to cut a furrow into the ice surface of the shelf, chopping out large chunks of the ice to make it wide and deep. The Tyrannosaur hissed again and moved in closer to Kelly. Once he had the furrow cut large enough, Troy placed the wrapped Gillionite down in it and set the electric timing fuse. Then he covered up everything with loose ice. Looking up, he saw the Tyrannosaur and Kelly. Hey, T-Rex! He shouted at the creature. Over here! The Tyrannosaur ignored him, all its attention on Kelly. It cocked its head to one side, then lowered again, came even closer to her, its great head forward. She stepped back, fearful it might be trying to ram her with its huge bony skull. Then she understood. You want to be petted, don't you? She asked, voice lost in the howling of the sudden katabatic winds from the interior. She remembered the newly hatched Tyrannosaur, an infant, not quite 7 inches, nuzzling its head happily against her as she petted it. She looked at it now, leaning towards her, a beast of monstrous dimensions, savage and uncontrollable as the icebound world of Antarctica itself. Tears froze on her cheeks as she shook her head. "No, baby, I'm sorry," she said softly. "I can't do that anymore." Sensing her rejection, the Tyrannosaur withdrew suddenly, uttering a muted roar of pain and resentment. It then turned towards Troy, standing on the ice shelf, and let out another roar, loud and defiant this time, a war cry aimed at the man who seemed to have kept it apart time and time again from the only human being it had ever learned to trust. The creature reached the ice shelf in several broad leaps. Troy stood facing it, nothing in his hand but the ice axe. The Tyrannosaur roared again at him, hot breath billowing in the frozen air, heavy with the stench of dead flesh. Troy moved back slowly, very slowly, making a gradual, hardly noticeable 90-degree turn, the creature turning with him until he stood on the landward side of the shelf, the Tyrannosaur on the far side, its back towards the sea, the buried Gelianite between them, ticking like a hidden bomb in the ice. Troy kept constant eye contact with the creature as it watched him with its own unblinking eyes. He glanced only once at where he buried the Gelianite, but that was enough. Following the line of his sight, the Tyrannosaur looked down too, noticing for the first time the irregular pattern made by the cut and reburied ice. It leaned forward, chuffing noisily as if determining to investigate this discrepancy. Remembering what the creature had done to the Gelianite they used against it in Deep Core Station, Troy moved forward suddenly, waving his arms to distract its attention. "Hey!" he called to him. "Look at me! Come on, look!" But the Tyrannosaur ignored him completely, leaning down to examine the ice with single-minded devotion. "Look at me, you goddamn overgrown son of a bitch!" He hurled the ice axe, aiming for the creature's eyes. It missed and bounced off the bony ridge above the right eye with a loud, hollow sound. The creature raised its head, hissing menacingly, clouds of vapor wreathing the deadly jaws. It lunged at Troy with a quick lateral movement that would have taken him off the ice shelf in the blink of an eye. But the buried Gelianite went off first. It burst from the ice with the force of an erupting volcano, throwing huge chunks of ice up into the air, blasting a jagged line through the shelf, cutting it loose from the coast. The force of the blast blew them in different directions. Troy went flying towards the ice-covered coast where he hit the ground, bounced, rolled again twice, came to a lifeless stop on his side, and did not move again. The Tyrannosaur skidded across the ice shelf towards the sea, digging its talon feet into the ice as it tried to stop before hitting the water. It fell in with a monumental splash and sank beneath the waves, the bone-chilling water churning white and frothy from the explosion. As Kelly ran towards Troy's motionless body, her own steps clumsy and halting, the strong katabatic winds seemed to abate all at once. The air grew suddenly warmer, and she noticed what felt like raindrops on her face. She looked up and saw them coming down, falling into her eyes and open mouth. The summer rains come at last. She found Troy lying on his side, motionless as before. She knelt down to touch him. "Troy!" She shook him hard. "Troy!" He remained on his side, without moving, still as the frozen corpses out in front of the storage depot at Deep Core Station, the day the Tyrannosaur first escaped. She turned him over on his back, his limbs flopping loose on the ice. The blast had torn off his goggles and burned his face and singed his hair and eyebrows. "Troy!" She leaned down over him, the rains of the Antarctic summer falling on them both as she shook his shoulders repeatedly, her face only inches from his. She kissed him hard on his burned lips, a sob breaking from her as she felt them cold and unresponsive. His eyes opened them, blinking slowly at her. She pulled back, astonished. "Don't ever do that to me again!" "The Gelianite," he said. "Did it work?" "Yes," she said, looking out at the churning water on the empty ice shelf, now an ice floe, feeling a pang of remorse at the thought that the Tyrannosaur had disappeared forever. "It worked just fine." At that moment, the great beast's head burst from the white water, followed by the entire length of its massive body, streams of near-freezing water cascading down its leathery skin. Kelly grabbed hold of Troy as the Tyrannosaur rose from the frigid water like an ancient god of the deep. The creature scrambled back onto the ice floe, vapor pluming from its eyes, vengeance burning in its yellow eyes. Troy tried to sit up, but could not. The Tyrannosaur moved across the ice floe towards the edge that faced the shore, where Troy and Kelly watched, trembling visibly from its freezing plunge into the wilder sea. It roared at them, the harsh sounds carrying across the water, echoing off the icebergs that floated nearby. "It's all over," Troy said. "He could probably swing back to shore if he wanted, but he doesn't, so he won't. The Tyrannosaur stood on the ice floe as it drifted farther out into the sea, roaring at them. Another sound reached their ears, a different animal cry, the barking of a dog. Kelly looked up in that direction. Woof! The mixed breed limped towards them, badly damaged by the fall down the mountainside, but alive. Kelly rose to her feet, laughing with delight. A wolf! Wolf! Troy tried to get up alongside her, but fell back onto the ice instead, touching his right leg. She turned to him at once. Troy, what's wrong? Don't worry. She knelt down and felt his leg. My God, it's broken. I'll be okay, Kelly. Collapsing to her knees, she shook her head hopelessly. What are we gonna do now? She whispered, more to herself than Troy. The Vladislavsk station lay a long march away. She didn't know if she could make it there herself, and Troy couldn't walk anymore. The break was bad. Just how bad, she wouldn't be able to tell for sure until she cut away the leg to his thermal suit and examined it. Something she couldn't do until she set up the tent to provide shelter against the katabatic winds that could start blowing again at any time, summer rains or no. And then what? Sit inside the tent and wait until their food ran out? Or Troy's leg gangrene? Or they froze to death? She looked at Troy, lying on the ice. Eyes closed once again, and at Wolf, limping painfully towards them, thick coat matted with dark blood, his own blood this time. In the distance, the Tyrannosaur roared on its ice floe. She heard it then, cutting above the diminishing roars. She looked up and saw the helicopter as it circled above them in the rain, a reconnaissance Huey from the EPA base on King George, or the Vladislavsk station, or somewhere, anywhere. She jumped to her feet, raised her hands, and waved to it. The pilot saw her and began his descent. A smile broke over her face, and she started to cry. Tears of relief and frustration and exhaustion. She kept waving to the helicopter, smiling up into the rain, cold water mixing with warm tears. A distant bellow cut through the descending rotor blades. She stopped and looked at the Tyrannosaur, roaring forlornly on its ice floe, moving ever further from land. She kept watching through the rain, even after the Huey had landed, until she could barely make out the distant figure on its ice floe, adrift in the vastness of the Weddell Sea. And that is the end of Carnivore! We did it! Thank you for joining me. This was hours of adventure and ridiculousness, and it was so fun. Thank you everyone for joining me, and don't forget to like and subscribe or you will become the spillage, and I'll see